Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 3 of the Q&As, so let's go ahead and knock this out. Alright, first question. Hello Jason, my question is as follows. What is the maximum allowable time to rest between workouts without suffering any loss in strength, muscle, or gaining any unfavorable body composition? I'm asking because occasionally circumstances and other obligations and work force me not to work out for 3 days in a row. Thanks for taking the time to read my question. Regards. Man, that's totally reasonable. When we start talking about serious detraining like body composition changes, you're talking about 2 weeks. If we're talking about performance degradation, approximately a week. So here's my point with that. If you're training full body, let's say you're doing full body 3 days a week, you normally have 2 days off every single week, right? That's what I do right now. I have the weekends off. So if you're forced to take 3 days off from training, work, and other obligations, do a few body weight exercises or whatever, do some pull-ups, some chin-ups, some push-ups, body weight squats, just to keep your body moving a little bit in there, and then get back into training. In other words, let's say you do normally 3 workouts 48 hours apart, and then you'd have one 72 hours apart. Just bump your schedule over 1 day. You know, in other words, let's say you're forced to, due to these obligations, to take 3 days off instead of 2. Well, then do 3 workouts 48 hours apart after that. And I mean, let's assume that your life is so busy that you have to do this every single month. So essentially, out of your 160 or so workouts a week, a year, let's say you're doing full body three times a week, you're going to miss approximately 12 workouts out of your 160. I don't think you're going to see a significant measurable loss from that. You'll be just fine. Just fine. Just you have to take an extra day off here and there on occasion. So even if you had to do it every single month, it's not going to hamper your results. You're going to be just fine. You know what? Life gets in the way. Life happens. If you're not a professional athlete in some way, or your career and income doesn't depend on this, a few missed workouts throughout the year are not going to have any meaningful difference to your life. You'll be just fine. All right, next question. Hi Jason, let's say someone was to do trap bar deadlift with a deficit large enough to be in the same position as a deep squat. What difference would it make as far as back and trunk muscles to have the weight in your hands versus on your back? Thanks. Honestly, man, this is totally absurd. I don't know that you would see a difference. Maybe your grip strength would be better, but you need to think about the logistics of setting this up. Think about the logistics of trying to set this up and to get a trap bar over a box and then load it with the weights and do all this, and then you're going to have the possibility of hitting the bar on the box or plates or whatever underneath you all the time. Maybe you could stack plates up, but to me, an exercise like this is almost an exercise in futility that just seems like a lot more setup, higher risk of injury, because again, whatever you're trying to stand on and climb on and everything else, it's really kind of ridiculous if you think about it from that perspective. And this is where we get into the topics oftentimes of why some of the basics are the basics. Why we've chosen to do the exercises we choose to do is not that they're better. I mean, hell, hypothetically, I think it would probably be pretty equal to a squat, wouldn't it? Yeah, it'd be pretty equal. But when you look at the setup, the complexity, all the other nonsense around it, it's very clear that the squat would be a better exercise just because you don't have to deal with all the nonsense around it. Right? You just need a squat rack or a squat stand and you can do squats. So, you know, we come up with these hypotheticals like this, but then when you look at it from a practical perspective, I think because of the effort involved in setting it up, all the other nonsense like that around it, it would make it an inferior exercise. But I think overall you'd probably get similar results, assuming you could do it consistently and get it set up and not get hurt. Right? But there's probably no benefit to it either, other than maybe a little extra grip training. Essentially, it's just doing almost a reverse example of a squat. You'd be doing, you know, bottom up. It'd be almost like just be doing pin squats, really. I think you'd get the same results. All right, next question. Hey Jason, what do you think about mentally disabled lifters using super sloppy form in powerlifting meets? I've seen a lot of videos that are used for inspiration. I can appreciate that. However, when each lift looks like Snap City form, I can't help but think that this is irresponsible. Um, that's tricky, and I think some of the ones we've definitely seen are like cases of cerebral palsy. And I actually have seen a coach a trainer who she trains multiple people with cerebral palsy in the gym and has them do the best that they can. And I guess here's my take on it. You need to understand that these are people who've built up to that, even though they can't use good form and it's all over the place and everything else. They end up using really light weights. I mean, we're talking about some of these lifters. You're looking at stuff like 30-pound squats, right, or a 25-pound standing press. They're using really, really light weights. And here's what I would say to that. It's not about them being inspirational to you. Forget about that. Don't even think about it from that perspective. Think about it from maybe the self-esteem perspective of those handicapped lifters who are able to get in and feel like they can compete. And quite frankly, the ones I've seen, I know which ones you're talking about. I've seen some of them. They're using such light weights, and their coaches have built them up to that. I honestly don't think they're going to get seriously hurt, and they have people there for safeties and everything else. And I do understand your concerns, but these are people who, if they didn't do this stuff, this is how they have to lift even in the gym because of some of their issues, that if they didn't do this, they wouldn't be getting any training at all. And overall, I think in this case, I think the benefits physically and psychologically to those lifters outweigh the risks that you're concerned with. And I do understand your concerns, but I think in the long run, it's better for them. And so, no, I don't really have the same real concerns there. I think it benefits them more than it risks them personally. So I don't see an issue with it. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I'm a late novice in my upper body, but still very much a noob in my leg squatting 100 kilograms for 5x5. I don't want to necessarily maximize my leg growth, but just grow at a decent rate. Right now I'm just doing 5x5 squats plus 1x5 deadlifts twice a week. Is that enough volume to make progress at an acceptable rate? Thanks, Jason. Yeah, that's enough volume to make progress. The question I would ask you is, though, why do you necessarily want to limit your legs? I mean, that's fine. You can do that and you'll make progress. You make pretty reasonable progress. But what I would also question is, why do you feel the need to limit that? Do you think you're going to get any benefit by not doing so? I mean, that strength and the stabilizers and everything else is going to carry over to other stuff you're doing with your upper body. I would understand if you want the extra recovery, maybe just to back them down a hair like that, just so you can do a little more upper body because you want to be upper body dominant. That's fine. But, make sure that you're doing it for a reason, because you could be shortchanging yourself. But, all things considered, I think what you're doing twice a week, it'll probably be fine as long as you have a progression system in place and you're actually utilizing the extra recovery you feel you might be freeing up to work on some of the big upper body lifts, your bench, your pull-ups, overhead pressing, things like that. But, you do you, bro. But yeah, you can make progress doing that. You'll probably make 90% of your potential. You just might not get that last 5 to 10%. All right, next question and last question of the week. I have more slow twitch muscle fibers. How to train to gain muscle? Any advice would be appreciated, not trolling. You use the name Jason Genova that you claim to be not trolling. It's ridiculous. So you have more slow twitch muscle fibers than fast twitch fibers. So you're telling me you're a member of the species known as Homo sapien. Got it. You realize every human being walking the face of the earth that we have ever studied has dramatically more slow twitch fibers than fast twitch, right? You do know that that's a characteristic of our species. Next, you're going to tell me that you have that you were born with 2 arms and 2 legs. You're perfectly normal. Now, here's the difference. The people who have we think of as a slight predisposition towards fast twitch fibers, which still means they're mostly slow twitch, but they have more fast twitch fibers than the average person. You know what we call that person? The guy who has a 36-inch vertical leap with no training. That's what you call that person. That's the guy who gets the basketball or the football scholarship, right? That's who you're talking about, the athletically, explosively genetically gifted. You're perfectly normal. You're perfectly normal. Train just like everybody else. You weren't born to be an NBA player or an NFL player. That's basically what you told me. Train like everybody else. Do normal training. You gain muscle. Normal programs were written for people exactly like you. You don't need to do anything special. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.